It's the Mike Francesa Podcast on the Bet Rivers Network.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa Podcast on the Bet Rivers Network, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos Tequila is brought to you by those who drink it. As we get ready for a mid-August weekend, we count down the days to the NFL, and you know what? It's right around the corner. I mean, next week, my household, like a lot of others, will be saying goodbye to all the college kids who are going back to school on differing days and stuff like that. So that's all happening. Back to school is everywhere. Getting kids ready for that this year. Will they take cell phones? Will they not take cell phones? Oh, the questions. But here's the thing. Before I get to what I quickly deemed the worst Met loss of the year, I know nothing about this, and I'm going to call her a young lady, and I know she's in her 15 minutes of fame. She just, struck a chord and went viral with some sleazy answer to a, man on the street question. The question I have is, knowing that that's the case, that her fleeting, and it will be fleeting fame, was about something as suggestive as her answer was, what in the world would possess the Mets to bring her in to throw out the first ball? And on top of it, on camp day. Wait, so everybody is trying to explain to every 10 and 12 and 13-year-old in the stands, and you've ever been to camp day, the Mets have a couple of them in the summer, and the game went so long that basically they either had to pitch tents or they had to leave in the fifth inning because they have to be out of there, and the buses start up at like 3 o'clock, 3:30, so they have to get them back. And that game was so slow, they were in the fourth inning at that time because both teams were walking the ballpark and, playing awful baseball. But we'll get to that. You have heard me say on numerous occasions, and it has continued through the ownership change, that the Mets can screw up a one-car funeral. What would ever possess somebody, and I would think that person spent last night not answering the phone and today running for cover or cleaning out their desk, whoever came up with the idea, whoever in the marketing or promotional department decided that it was a good idea to bring this girl in and glorify her and shine the spotlight on her and let her throw out the first pitch, which got them utterly destroyed from coast to coast. I mean, I've always stated this, that the worst things I hated was when something was so obvious to go after that it was like, a hanging piñata, that you just basically, you took a bat and you hit it. It's no fun. You like to take the position that someone else doesn't have, or the position that is unique, or the position that's clever. You don't want the easy one. But this one is this is the kind of shake your head one, where you just say, what the hell are they thinking? And can you imagine when the owner is explaining to his wife exactly who this girl is who's throwing out the first pitch? Unless it was her idea, which I'm not saying it was, but who knows? I mean, I don't know where it came from. All right. I have no answer for that. Some things with the Mets, you have to realize at this point, after all these years around the sport, there are things about the Mets that just are not able to be answered. They just are. And yesterday was another one of those days that just is, where you just shake your head and say, it's the Mets. Now, the Mets were playing a bad Oakland team, which has been playing better, which does have a great talent at the back of the bullpen, which we all knew and found out yesterday. But they were without a couple of their best hitters, including their best hitter, who was away on maternity leave. You figured, okay, they win the second game after losing the first game. they're not going to lose the series to the A's. Right now, every win is precious. The Marlins coming in, then the Orioles, and then they're going to go face the two hottest teams in baseball back-to-back for 7 games on the West Coast, and it's going to be tough. So if you go Orioles, and I talked about that 10 games a while ago, Orioles, Padres, Diamondbacks, hey, it's going to be rough for the Mets. But when you start to look at the Met pitching, forget the slumps. Forget the injury to Nimmo and his slump. Forget the slump by Alvarez. Forget all the slumps right now. How can you lose that game yesterday, especially after you have a 5-0 lead? With a veteran pitcher who is struggling on the mound, but how does he have a runner on first and 2 out and walk 2 batters into a home run? And now it's 5-4. And then every relief pitcher they brought in continued to just be worse than the one before. The Mets have had a problem with walks all year. We know that. The only team in Major League Baseball that has walked more opposing players than the Mets, and the Mets have walked 50 more than anybody else in the National League, 50 more, is the White Sox. So really the Mets lead the major leagues because the White Sox are not a major league team. We know that. I mean, nobody with that. I know they beat the Yankees a game, but they're 29-93. They are going to flirt with the worst record in baseball history. So they're the only team that has walked more opposing players than the Mets have. And the Mets lead the major leagues in hit batsmen. They hit one yesterday. And they threw in 11 walks, a hit batter, and 2 wild pitches. They blow 5-0 and 6-4 leads and get blanked for the last 5 innings by the A's bullpen. 5 innings with a game they desperately need to win. They can't get a run across in the last 5 innings of the game. Now, you knew that once you saw Mr. Miller yesterday, you knew it was going to be a very tough outing, okay? We all know about him. Everybody's talked about him. Now, nobody expected them to go 2 innings with him yesterday. But yesterday, he hasn't pitched a lot, and he hadn't given up a hit. Hadn't given up a hit since he came back from the injury. He went 2 innings. He threw more pitches than he's ever thrown in a game. 39. I think his high was 36. He threw the ball consistently over 100 miles an hour. He struck out 3 guys, and he overmatched Alonso in a big spot where you're thinking, all right, Alonso can do needs to be done here. There's a runner on base. He can hit a 2-run jack, and the Mets can run around the bases and win this game. And instead he hit a pop-up 9 miles high in the infield. Not getting around on a, maybe it was a 102-mile-an-hour pitch. I don't know. He threw a lot of pitches over 100 miles an hour. And he was ultra impressive. As was Ferguson, who went 2 scoreless innings, and Alexander, who went a scoreless inning, and Miller, who went 2 scoreless innings. 5 scoreless innings. So the Mets, in a game they desperately need to win, they blow a 5-0 lead. They blow a 6-4 lead. They walk 11, hit a batter, and throw 2 wild pitches. And they can't score against the A's in the last 5 innings of the game. As they continue to just really fall apart. The only thing that has helped them is the fact that the Braves just can't get out of their own way. So the Braves have kept the Mets within hailing distance. If the Braves have a hot streak, it's over. Arizona and San Diego now are 6 games up in the loss column, 6.5 games up overall in the wild card. And obviously, both are pursuing the Dodgers, who are having their own problems. But the Mets needed to get something done against the Athletics. And with the series on the line, and the Marlins coming in, and then the Orioles, and then the trip west, you cannot blow 5-0 leads to the Oakland A's, who hadn't had a comeback like that all year. That game should have been over. Instead, they come right out, after they take a 5-0 lead. You know what the baseball adage is? Okay, 5-0 lead, go out the next inning as a veteran pitcher and put up a 0. That's how you win baseball games. You put up a 0 the inning after the rally. What did they do? Gave up a grand slammer after 2 walks. And the A's scored, and the A's scored in the 4th, in the 5th, and 2 in the 6th. And then they didn't have to score anymore because the Mets weren't going to score anymore. A brutal loss for a team that is, let's be honest, nosediving. They were carried by the offense. And now the offense has really hit the skids. The pitching hasn't been there all year, and this bullpen is such complete garbage that it's very hard to have any faith in them. I just, you look at a game. You looked at that game yesterday after Quintana left, and you said, how are they going to get 12 outs to Diaz? How are they going to do it? And they couldn't. I mean, they go into the top of the 4th with a 5-0 lead, which means they have to get 15 outs to Diaz. And I'm not pitching Diaz more than 3 outs that game, okay? So I'm not doing that. But they had to get 15 outs to Diaz. They couldn't get any of them before they give up the runs. A brutal, devastating loss. One that, you know, if it wasn't a team coming in that is just, you know, a really bad team. I mean, that's all you can say. I mean, the Marlins have had a miserable season, and they traded off the whole team. They're 31 games under 500. But would you be surprised if they win a game or two? Not the way things are going for the Mets. The Mets are lucky that right now in the wild card that they are anywhere near as close as they are. They're only 2 back. Yes, San Francisco's right there. Just a couple behind them, nipping at their heels. They're only 2 behind the Braves, but sooner or later you got to figure the Braves are going to heat up. And if they do, there won't be anybody else to shoot at. Not the way San Diego and Arizona are playing. I mean, Arizona and San Diego are 16 games over 500. The Mets are 3. The Mets had an unexpected couple of months there. Right now, it does not look good. And yesterday, camp day, with obviously a side diversion thrown in just to spice things up. It was as bad as it can possibly get for the Mets. I just don't see how it could get worse. Now, as far as the Yankees, hey, you get the idea that this Yankee Oriole thing is just destined. No matter what one does, it's almost like a mirror image. It's almost destined to go down to the last week of the season. Maybe to those 3 games at Yankee Stadium, the 24th, the 25th, the 26th of September. They're 72 and 50. They're both going to the postseason. the Yankees go 20-20, they win 92 games. Will 92 win the division? Who knows? I think the Yankees will have somewhere between 92 and 95 or 6 wins. Probably play a couple of games over 500 the rest of the way. But it's going to come down to those games against the Orioles because winning the division is an enormous advantage. Being one of the top 2 seeds is an enormous advantage the way the playoffs are structured there. And if you notice, the Astros have now started to move, not to where they're going to threaten the Yankees for a record or anything. I mean, they're still 5 behind in that regard. But they've moved 3 games ahead in the division. And their presence makes the playoffs a lot tougher. You just know that if they're standing there, they have so many guys who know how to do it. So many guys who have been there, done that. We know they have a lot of issues with their pitching staff and with some players in certain spots. But they still know how to win big games. And they will be a major threat. Far more, I think, than Minnesota, and I think even far more than Cleveland. You have to respect Baltimore because they have a lot of good young players and some top-line pitching. So the Yankees just continue to go, right about their business. This evening, open up a weekend set against a team that's, not very good offensively. Cole should have a good game this evening, and that should get the weekend off to a good start, as far as that's concerned. NFL, it's a little early for us to start doing any previews or any predictions or anything like that. We'll obviously wait until those early days of September for that, but it's not falling on anybody. No one is missing the fact of what Atlanta is trying to build here and what they think about their chances this year. See, everyone thought, now Atlanta's going to make themselves a real threat in that division. No. Atlanta has bigger designs than that. And you're seeing it with the moves that they're making. Going to be a very, very interesting team. Very interesting. Again, people are so hungry to have things matter in terms of the NFL, to help them make decisions early on teams and stuff like that, that they try to use these little bits and pieces from the preseason, which you have to be careful about that. But when you see a team adding the kind of personnel that they're adding, you have to take that seriously. You'd be crazy not to. And that does bear some watching. It really does. It's interesting to see what's going on out west with the Dodgers and Arizona and San Diego. And just, you got to give Arizona credit because what they did and who they are. But San Diego really improved themselves. And, both those teams are red hot. And they're putting a lot of pressure on the Dodgers, who have issues. Who definitely have issues. And let's be honest, the Phillies haven't been world beaters for a while either. Everyone wanted to make them way better than everybody else. And you still have to give them a very good chance in the playoffs, but they really have had a tough time. I mean, it's been a while, and things have been very hard for them. But remember, we still have a quarter of the season to play. We are right there. There's 40 games left for most teams. Anywhere from right around 40 to a couple more than 40, but you're looking at one quarter of the season left. And you're about 2 weeks from putting into overdrive. You get to Labor Day. Labor Day's early this year. And then it's pedal to the metal. You're sprinting home. And there's going to be a lot of teams live. A lot of teams still alive. It's going to be very interesting. You know, in the last couple of days, and I don't know what caused this. Maybe somebody can tell me. But I have been getting deluged, and a lot of times I get stuff from people who the thing says, when somebody texts you that you don't know, it says, let me see what it says, they're not in your contact list. Okay? I guess that means don't respond. I have been getting deluged with stuff about, is Judge better than Mantle? All of a sudden. Now, I don't know where this topic started, if I missed something. I don't know if it was maybe on a ball game or maybe on a talk show somewhere, but this has become, I guess, a big topic, and people wanted me to weigh in because they know that I'm a Mantle guy. So I guess because I have been getting it from, some people I know who are in the business who are sending me things saying, who's better, Mantle or Judge? And I'm like, are we talking career? Are we talking overall ability, just natural ability? Are we talking performance? What are we talking here? So I gather somewhere along the way this has been, but it just shows you the amount of respect that Judge is now garnering. I mean, now to be compared to Mickey Mantle, hey, that is immortality. You're talking rarefied air now. Now, I understand they're not ready to put him with Ruth, obviously. No one goes with Ruth. We know that. And Gehrig's numbers are insane. It was a different era, but insane. You know, I heard a discussion recently, and I had to agree with it. I know what it was. I was watching the game yesterday, and they were interviewing Mike Cameron and Nevin because their kids were playing for the A's, and they were in the stands at Citi Field. So they were interviewing him while I was watching the game. And they asked Cameron, and this might have been the night before, might not have been yesterday, might have been Wednesday. They asked him, what's the biggest difference in the game? And he hit it right on the head. He said, the pitchers just own the hitters. So the hitters just swing for the seats. And they honor power now. And he's 100% right. It's about power, and it's about on-base percentage. So if you get a lot of walks and you hit home runs, you're golden in this era. Because if you look at it, every team now, if you went back to when I started watching baseball on a day-to-day basis, which would be the early 60s, the beginning of the 60s. If you had a guy hitting 220, he was your number 8 hitter. And he was a banjo hitter. You didn't stay in the lineup batting 220. You didn't have guys, when you were batting 250, you were a 250 hitter. That wasn't, you had your 250 hitters. You had your 250 hitters with power. You had your 260, 270 guys, and then you had your guys who could hit 300, and sometimes, much more than that. Now you look at lineups, and I don't care what lineup you go down, you'll have guys in the lineup hitting 190, hitting, 205. It's the A's yesterday. 186, 198, 194, 214, 210, 240. I mean, they overpower the pitchers. The pitchers overpower now because starters only go go there 3 or 4 innings, sometimes 5, rarely more than that. They go to the bullpen. Everybody throws hard out of the bullpen. Everybody out of the bullpen strikes guys out. And the other thing is they don't make contact anymore. Everybody strikes out. It was scandalous if you struck out 100 times. You better have been a slugger. You better have been, Mickey Mantle or Willie Stargell or Reggie Jackson if you were going to strike out 100 times. And that was strike out 100 times. That wasn't strike out 200 times. When Mantle left Major League Baseball, he had struck out more than anybody in the history of baseball at that point. He had an 18-year career. As we know, a brilliant 18-year career, but he had struck out. Now, he had walked more than he had struck out, but he had struck out more than anybody in the history of baseball at that point. Now, you wouldn't even blink at his strikeout numbers. 111, 90, 107, 90, 75, 120, 126, 78, 102, 76, 1,710 strikeouts, 1,733. 1,733 walks. But take a guy now who is considered a good slugger, a good power hitter. And you look, now leadoff hitters strike out 100 times. Forget sluggers. Leadoff hitters strike out 100 times in a season. Everybody in the lineup strikes out 100 times. It's just crazy. It's amazing how it has changed, and it just shows you the dominance, the absolute dominance. Like Kyle Schwarber, 150 strikeouts, 156 strikeouts, 200 strikeouts, 215 strikeouts, 215 strikeouts. 141 strikeouts. Now, guys strike out 200 times. 200 times in a season. Leadoff hitters strike out. A guy like Volpe, he couldn't have stayed in the lineup striking out the way he does in the old days. You wouldn't have had him in the lineup. That's how much the game has changed, and it's what Cameron said, that it was exactly right. The pitchers dominate now. They blow hitters away. The batting averages are so much lower. The strikeouts so much more prevalent. I mean, it's crazy. Right now, Brandon Nimmo has struck out 127 times already this year with 40 games, a quarter of the season to play. Think about that. I mean, that's crazy when you think about it. Lindor's already struck out 100 times. Go down the list. And the batting averages, 226, 246, 235, 217. No 300 hitters. And that's you don't have, the game is played now, swing and a miss, hit the ball out of the park. There's no, rallies aren't the same way they used to be. The game isn't played, you don't see hit and runs. You don't have the game inside the game anymore. It's not played that way anymore. It's completely different. And it has to do with the dominance of the pitcher and especially of the relief pitcher. In the old days, the relief pitcher who pitched in middle relief was a guy who was a failed starter. He wasn't a guy who had ability. You didn't have 6 live arms in a bullpen, guys who could come in and swing and miss, make you swing and miss. And if guys come in and just, you might have a guy who could, Vic Radix come in at the end of the game and blow you away. That could happen. I mean, he struck out a lot of guys, but the point is, and, the great pitchers struck out a lot of guys, but guys hit 300 guys with the bat on the ball. It's completely changed. So the sport they're playing right now is a very, very, very different sport in that regard. There's no contact. The ball's not put in play. And it's about, it's about trajectory and exit velo and, hitting the ball out of the ballpark. That's it. Doesn't matter what your batting average is. Hit the ball out of the ballpark. Judge has already struck out 130 times. The guy is a 333 hitter, which is top of the league. He is a brilliant player right now. He's already struck out. He's going to strike out 180 times. No one cares. Nor should they. But I'm just showing you how the game has changed. Remarkably. And the answer I gave is, do I think Judge is yet Mantle? I do not. But I think Mantle, who was his own worst enemy at times and did suffer from a lot of different injuries, had as much physical talent as anyone who ever played. But Judge is, you know what? He's working his way towards the big guys. He really is. We'll see you later.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network.